saw him in Vegas. RZA got into some shit with Tyreek. Got his chain snatched. Got punched in his mouth. Got beat. No, got wrestled up a little bit. Got real funky. It was a club. It got real rowdy, and Pac got his chain back.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
And RZA got his he got his ass whooped in there. Where they ended up snatching his chain while they were whooping his ass, right? And he's outnumbered. No disrespect to the Wu-Tang guys.
Any artists out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
August 1995, New York City, the Source Awards lit the fuse for a coast-to-coast showdown. Suge Knight didn't just throw shade at Puff Daddy, he put the whole East Coast on notice. But it wasn't only Bad Boy feeling the heat. All eyes locked on Wu-Tang Clan. 9 grimy spitters from Staten Island whose presence carried more weight than most record labels combined. Fast forward to 1996, Suge's Vegas spot, Club 662, Wu's mastermind RZA got jumped, his chain snatched right off his neck, a disrespect so bold it screamed war on Death Row's home turf.
I remember dragging him, but the whole time he hollering, "They got my chain, they got my chain, man, they got my chain."
Word spread like wildfire. An old dirty bastard made sure everybody knew the deal, spitting a fiery warning that Suge wasn't leaving New York alive. This wasn't just rap beef. This was a ticking time bomb ready to blow.
A couple months earlier, one of they that got, he was in our club, 662, and somebody snatched his chain, put hands on it. We got the chain back and found that big, that's love. And I went to Method Man like, yo, we handled that, man. We want to talk to you. That was never our order.
The mid-90s became one of hip-hop's most dangerous eras. Every magazine cover shouted East Coast versus West Coast. Every interview felt like a spark tossed onto gasoline. And behind the beats, it wasn't just music. Lives were on the line as street gangs pushed deeper into the industry. Suge Knight's rise was the stuff of legend and menace. From a Compton football player to bodyguard to one of the scariest power players in the game. With Death Row Records, he turned Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and eventually Tupac into megastars. Many, Suge wasn't just a mogul. He was the face of West Coast excess, intimidation, and control. Stories flew across the internet about his ruthless grip on artists and rivals. A man who always got what he wanted, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, out in Staten Island, Wu-Tang Clan was rewriting the entire rap playbook. 9 voices, 9 visions, building something bigger than just music. A philosophy, a movement, an empire. And while the headlines were locked on Bad Boy versus Death Row, another deadly storyline lurked in the shadows. The near collisions between Suge Knight and Wu-Tang. At the center stood Robert Fitzgerald Diggs, aka RZA, the architect, the visionary. The man shaping Wu not just as a rap crew, but as a dynasty. Old Dirty Bastard, Method Man, Raekwon, Ghostface Killah, Inspector Deck, U-God, and Master Killer, every one of them had their own wild style. But together, Wu-Tang Clan was a force of nature. Fans swore they couldn't be touched, not even by Suge Knight and his Death Row machine. When Wu dropped their debut album, Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers in 1993, hip-hop was never the same again. The record was raw, gritty, unpredictable. And that's exactly why it hit so hard. It felt more real than anything the East Coast had been putting out in years. Wu's overnight takeover didn't just shake up New York. It sent shockwaves all the way to boardrooms in LA. Word on the street was, Suge Knight kept a close eye on Staten Island because Wu-Tang had pulled off the unthinkable. They weren't bending to the industry's most powerful names. They were running their own show, their own empire. While other rappers folded under Suge's pressure, Wu-Tang stood tall, a brotherhood that refused to break. Then came the night everything almost boiled over. Madison Square Garden, 1995, Source Awards. By this time, the event wasn't just about trophies, it was the main stage for power moves, sneak disses, and straight-up threats. Careers could be built or destroyed in a single moment. When Suge Knight stepped on stage to accept Best Motion Picture Soundtrack for Above the Rim, the entire industry froze. And then came that line, the one that would live in hip-hop history. Suge looked into the crowd and said, any artist out there that want to be an artist and want to stay a star and don't want to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record dancing, come to Death Row. The room erupted. And in that moment, Suge didn't just throw shade, he declared war. That infamous line was a straight-up shot at Sean Puff Daddy Combs, the face of Bad Boy Records. The arena exploded. Some people roared in approval, while others booed loud enough to shake the walls. East Coast rappers glared at Suge like they were ready to throw hands, while the West Coast crews clapped and cheered in unity. But here's the part most people forget. Wu-Tang was in the building that night too. They weren't caught up in the feud, but they sure as hell weren't invisible. Wu-Tang hit the stage with Ice Cream, Raekwon's smooth single, and Method Man later scooped up an award for How High with Redman. But what stuck with the clan wasn't the trophies. It was the energy. Raekwon would later admit the night felt less like an award show and more like a battlefield with cameras flashing all around. He said, "It wasn't no East Coast, West Coast war. It was two crews, two rival teams. The media just blew it up, and that's where Wu made their boldest move, staying neutral. They didn't throw in with Bad Boy just because they shared the East Coast, and they didn't side with Death Row even with Method Man's West Coast ties. Wu carved their own lane, proving neutrality wasn't weakness, it was power. Everyone in that arena knew that if things spilled outside, Wu-Tang wasn't just safe, they were untouchable. Their reach ran from New York blocks to Cali corners, with affiliates that carried real weight in the streets. Even Suge Knight, the master of intimidation, knew better than to underestimate them. And here's the twist most don't realize. Suge wasn't only making enemies that night, he was hunting opportunities. By the early 90s, Wu-Tang wasn't just a rap group. They were a brand, a business. And Suge had his eye on bringing them into Death Row's empire. Journalist Ronan Rowe revealed in his book, Have Gun, Will Travel, that Suge Knight made bold but failed attempts to sign the Wu-Tang Clan, or at least snatch a few members. By 1996, Method Man had already linked with Tupac and Thigh Dog Pound on Got My Mind Made Up from Pac's Diamond certified All Eyes on Me. But here's the kicker. Inspector Deck actually laid down a verse for that track, and it got cut from the final version. In the early 90s, Death Row stormed out the gate as the ultimate West Coast powerhouse, dominating radio, charts, and headlines. Wu-Tang, though, they played the long game. Their debut shook the culture, and by the mid-90s, they had the sales, the acclaim, and the street stamp to back it up. For Suge, pulling Wu into Death Row would have been the ultimate East Coast trophy. 9 rappers, 9 solo careers, and the kind of movement that could rival Puff Daddy's Bad Boy empire. But Wu-Tang wasn't biting. RZA's blueprint was untouchable. Wu would build their own dynasty, not march as soldiers for somebody else's army. And the fact that Suge even reached out showed how serious it was. He didn't dismiss Wu, he respected them. Or maybe he feared them. Because in Suge's world, equals were threats. By 1996, Death Row stood on top of the game. Tupac's All Eyes on Me was crushing the charts. Snoop Dogg had the West Coast on his back, and Suge ruled like a kingpin. Meanwhile, Wu dropped Wu-Tang Forever, a double album, multi-platinum, and the final proof their debut wasn't just lightning in a bottle. Now the industry looked like a chessboard, with Suge and Wu as two massive pieces, circling each other, never clashing head-on, but always one wrong move away from collision. And then came the Pac factor. Tupac was Suge's golden weapon, but Pac had New York roots and a deep respect for Wu-Tang's artistry. Rumors swirled that Pac secretly admired Method Man and RZA. Fans still believe that Suge felt uneasy about it, because if Pac respected Wu, Death Row couldn't treat them as just another East Coast rival.
A couple months earlier, one of they that got he was in our club 662 and somebody snatched his chain, put hands on it. We got the chain back and found that nigga. That's love.
After the Source Awards, the rumors got loud. Whispers that Suge Knight had sent his goons to press Wu-Tang at a New York industry event. Nothing went down, but the story alone spread like wildfire and added fuel to the tension. Still, the most dangerous brush between Wu and Death Row didn't happen in New York at all. It went down in Las Vegas, 1996, inside Club 662, Suge Knight's personal playground where Death Row ruled the night. That's where it happened. RZA, Wu-Tang's mastermind, got jumped and his chain snatched right on Death Row's turf. This wasn't just a robbery, it was a slap in the face. Pure disrespect.
Somebody tapped my shoulder, I turn around, it's Pac. He there with Suge. Now the whole time Pac is talking, I can't concentrate. He's telling me about some incident that happened with RZA in Vegas.
But before it could spiral out of control, Tupac himself stepped in.
Blah.
According to Wu member U-God, Pac hunted down the guys who had the chain, confronted them directly, and got it back. Then he personally handed the jewelry back to RZA, and even told him straight up if he wanted revenge, Pac would set up a one-on-one. Here's the wild part. Pac made it crystal clear this wasn't an official Death Row hit. These were rogue players, not soldiers moving under Suge's orders. Pac even scolded Suge's men for daring to mess with Wu-Tang while he was around. That move earned Pac respect from both sides, but the tension didn't just vanish. Ghostface later recalled how Old Dirty Bastard reacted when the chatter hit. True to form, Dirty didn't hold back, allegedly snapping, "This guy's not leaving New York alive." The crew had to physically pull him back because everyone knew ODB was unpredictable enough to turn those words into reality. Wu didn't cool down out of fear. They cooled down because they understood the stakes. One reckless night could have triggered something way bigger than anyone could control. It was a dangerous what-if moment. What if ODB hadn't been checked? What if Suge's guys doubled down? Hip-hop history might have taken a bloody turn that night. And just when it seemed the tension had peaked, Method Man later shared a story about one of the strangest encounters of his career, a wild run-in at a Soul Train Awards after-party in Los Angeles, early 1996. Tripping on mushrooms, seeing the world through a haze, Method Man recalled one of the strangest nights of his life. He remembered Puff Daddy acting extra friendly, almost too friendly, like something was off. Then out of nowhere, he bumped straight into Tupac and Suge Knight. Pac walked right up to him, no hesitation, and brought up the Vegas chain-snatching incident with RZA. Pac told him straight, "If I'd been there, that never would have happened." Then Pac hit him with words that shifted the whole energy. If there's anybody we would fit with on the East Coast, it'd be Wu-Tang. That was huge. Pac was laying it out plain. Wu wasn't the enemy. This wasn't East Coast versus West Coast. This was Bad Boy versus Death Row. Pac was sending a lifeline, and everyone in the room felt it. Meanwhile, Suge stood there silent, puffing on a cigar, face cold, giving nothing away. No threats, no smiles, just stone. To Meth, it felt staged, like Suge was playing the boss role while Pac handled the diplomacy. The vibe was tense, surreal, and could have flipped violent in an instant. But Pac's respect for Wu-Tang kept it cool, kept it from spiraling into a war nobody could stop. Later, Reggie Wright Jr., Death Row's head of security, backed the story up, proving Pac wasn't just a soldier in the East-West War, he was a peacemaker too. Think about that. One stolen chain had the power to set off a full-blown clash between Death Row and Wu-Tang, and in the middle of his own bloody feud with Biggie and Bad Boy, Pac still took time to shield Wu's name. That's real respect. And the stage for all this tension didn't end in Vegas. The 1996 MTV Video Music Awards in New York felt like the entire hip-hop world was holding its breath. Death Row rolled in deep with Pac, Snoop, and Suge, while the East stood strong with Wu-Tang, the kings of Staten Island now standing as the most respected crew in the game. It might have looked like a night of glitz, flashing cameras, and trophies, but anyone who knew the stakes understood the truth. The 1996 MTV VMAs felt less like an award show and more like two armies stepping onto the same battlefield. Only this time, it was under the blinding lights of live television. The air inside Radio City Music Hall was thick with tension. Every glance, every move felt like a calculated play on a chessboard. Some even described it as a standoff in slow motion. And the craziest part, the fact that nothing happened made it unforgettable. A year earlier, at the 1995 Source Awards, Suge had already fired shots at Puff Daddy, sparking the now legendary Coastal War. Wu-Tang had performed that night too, but they stayed out of the mess, focusing only on the music. But when the VMAs came to New York, the stage was bigger, the stakes higher, and the entire country was locked in. Death Row rolled in heavy, Pac and Suge still buzzing off the chaos of Hit 'em Up. Wu-Tang was there too, Method Man and ODB holding down the East. The night was explosive on paper, but in reality, nothing popped off. If anything, it only confirmed what Pac had already drawn in blood. This wasn't East Coast versus West Coast. It was Bad Boy versus Death Row. ODB even made it clear in interviews later. He loved both Biggie and Pac, and all he wanted was for the violence to stop. It was a rare plea for peace in an era where most voices only made things worse.
If we with anybody on the East Coast, it'd be y'all Wu-Tang nigga. Fucks with y'all Wu-Tang.
Then came the night that shattered everything. September 13th, 1996. The neon glow of Las Vegas lit up the strip, bouncing off chrome bumpers and casino signs. But beneath the lights, the energy was dark.
Backstage, Tupac said he was ready to battle Death Row's East Coast nemesis, the people from Bad Boy Records.
They see us and they want drama, we gonna definitely bring it like only Death Row could bring it.
Tupac Shakur, Death Row's crown jewel, had just left the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand with Suge Knight riding shotgun. Hours later, only blocks away from Club 662, the same place where Wu-Tang had already been tested, Pac's BMW was riddled with bullets. 4 shots tore into his body. 6 days later, he was gone. The entire rap world froze, and in the silence that followed, everything shifted. Death Row, once untouchable, started collapsing overnight. Suge was arrested within days for parole violations, caught on tape throwing punches during the Tyson fight. Without Pac, without Dre, who had already walked away, Death Row's empire started crumbling, brick by brick. The image of Suge Knight, the invincible kingpin, began to crack wide open. And for Wu-Tang, Pac's death wasn't just another headline. It was personal. It was the loss of an artist who had shown them respect when the war could have easily dragged them into the fire. It was a warning shot, proof of how close hip-hop came to full-on war. When RZA got jumped at Club 662 and his chain snatched, that insult could have lit the fuse for coast-to-coast bloodshed. ODB's furious outburst made one thing clear: Wu-Tang would never tolerate disrespect. Yet somehow, the line was never crossed. And Pac's death revealed why. The balance was always fragile, always one misstep away from destruction. Looking back now, it's chilling to imagine the alternative. What if Wu had struck back in Vegas? What if Death Row affiliates had pushed harder in New York? Picture it. Suge Knight's explosive Source Awards moment colliding with 9 hardened MCs from Staten Island, each with real street ties, FBI files, and whole crews behind them, going head-to-head with Suge's blood-affiliated army in Los Angeles. The body count would have been catastrophic. The headlines would have poured gasoline on the East verses. West blazed until it scorched the entire culture. Hip-hop was already bleeding. Biggie was gunned down just 6 months after Pac. If Wu-Tang versus Death Row had entered the battlefield, the so-called golden era might have ended in ashes. But it didn't, because Wu refused to play anyone's pawns. RZA, always the chess master, kept his eye on the bigger picture. Wu focused on empire building, Wu wear clothing lines, solo albums under one flag, world tours that spread their name globally. They didn't need to prove themselves in Suge's war, and Suge knew better than to provoke them further. Even at his most ruthless, Suge recognized Wu-Tang's power. They weren't just another rap crew. They were 9 generals commanding an army of affiliates from Shaolin to Brooklyn. Starting a war with them wasn't business, it was suicide. And when Pac personally stepped in after RZA's chain was taken, making sure it was returned, making it clear the beef wasn't with Wu, it sealed the truce. Pac respected the clan. He drew the line between a rap war and a real war, and his word forced Suge to let it go. That respect, that restraint, changed everything. When Wu dropped Wu-Tang Forever in 1997, they didn't dance on Death Row's grave or celebrate Pac's death. Instead, they mourned the state of hip-hop. Tracks like A Better Tomorrow and Impossible weren't about dis-ease, they were about survival, about keeping the culture alive when everything else was falling apart. Meanwhile, Suge sat behind bars and Death Row started eating itself alive. Snoop jumped ship, Dre built Aftermath. Pac was gone. Suge's empire rotted from the inside. The streets shifted. Yet even through all the wreckage, respect between Wu and Death Row's remaining soldiers never fully died. When Corrupt dropped his infamous 1999 diss track calling out names, he blasted nearly every East Coast rapper in sight, but not Wu-Tang. He called them family, a small detail, but a powerful one. Wu was never the enemy, and years later, the ties only got stranger. Raekwon even signed with Dre's Aftermath long after Dre split from Death Row, recording tracks that showed the respect between both camps still lingered. Killer Priest, a Wu-Tang affiliate, even linked with Corrupt and other West Coast MCs to form the supergroup HRSMN. What once looked like sparks for war turned into something nobody expected: collaboration. Wu-Tang walked out of the 1990s bruised but still breathing, while Bad Boy lost Biggie and Death Row lost Pac. The clan managed to sidestep the deadliest violence of the era, and make no mistake, that wasn't luck. Their neutrality wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Wu understood that real power didn't always come from pulling the trigger or firing back on wax. Sometimes the greatest strength came from letting the smoke clear while you built something bigger. ODB's wild threats, those tense run-ins with Suge and Pac, RZA's chain snatching in Vegas, any of those moments could have sparked a coast-to-coast inferno. But time and again, Wu pulled back, choosing empire over ego. That choice saved them. And yet the question still lingers: what if? What if Suge Knight had really gone to war with Wu-Tang? Picture it. Death Row soldiers and blood affiliates on one side, Wu-Tang and their Staten Island crews on the other. Club 662 wouldn't have been just one chain snatching. It could have been a massacre. The Source Awards wouldn't have ended in stares. It could have been an all-out riot. The so-called golden age of hip-hop, the years that gave us 36 Chambers, All Eyes on Me, and Ready to Die, might have ended in flames. Instead, what hip-hop got was survival. What hip-hop got was Wu-Tang Forever. In the end, the story of Suge Knight and the Wu-Tang Clan isn't about a war, it's about the war that never came. It's about how, in the deadliest years of rap's history, 2 of the most feared forces stared each other down, brushed the line, and refused to cross it. And because they didn't, hip-hop itself survived. Wu-Tang is forever, and that might be the only reason we can still say it today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And I'll see you on the next one.